Welcome to the Crap Cafe. Welcome to my Vinsmoke Sanji appreciation video. If you've seen any of my previous videos, I've done Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp, and now we are up to Sanji. This is just a video series to appreciate where the character has started and where they are now, and everything in between. So we talk about his backstory, we talk about his current accomplishments, and then of course we talk about his dream and how that'll be accomplished, and what the end of series looks like, or end of Wano looks like for Sanji. A lot is going on right now, but we'll keep manga spoilers out of it until later. I know some of my previous videos, like Luffy and Zoro, unfortunately, were not anime-only friendly, but I'll make sure that no manga spoilers are mentioned until the time that they're relevant. So if you're anime-only, feel free to watch at least the first part of this video. This hair is really difficult. I feel like I'm back in 7th grade with this hairstyle. But yes, this video will be all about Vinsmoke Sanji, and before we start, if you haven't subscribed yet and if you've seen any of my previous videos or you enjoy this one that you're about to watch, make sure you subscribe because a lot of work went into these big videos, and I also enjoy just doing manga reactions on Twitch, and also check me out on Twitter for more One Piece anime and gaming content. But with that all out of the way, let's dive into Vinsmoke Sanji's appreciation video. If you're looking for a good trip down memory lane, then this is the video series for you. First, we're gonna start with Sanji's dream and his backstory, up until he joins the crew. For his dream, Sanji's dream is to find the All Blue, an ocean that has all of the ocean sea creatures all in one place, a seafaring cook's dream. They've got fish from the north, south, east, and west blue, as well as the Grand Line, all in one place, so someone like Sanji, who is really into sailing, but also is on a floating restaurant on the sea, an ocean of that caliber would definitely be something that he would be interested in. And he actually read this in a book when he was a child under Judge's watch, we'll call it. We'll get to that. But he read about the All Blue's existence, and although a lot of cooks that he's come across all dismiss it as a fairy tale, he holds on to the dream that it is real, and it would be a great place to have everything that a cook would want. And this dream is also what led him to Zeph's care, because Zeph also had the dream of finding the All Blue someday, and that led to him saving Sanji, both on the storm of the ship and on the deserted island that they found themselves on. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. First, as a little younger Sanji, he was born in the North Blue, actually. Even though we found him in the East Blue, a little Sanji was raised in the North Blue with Vinsmoke Judge and Sora, his mother. He also had an older sister, Reiju, and he was one of 4 boys, Ichiji, Niji, Sanji, and Yonji. His father was not only a ruler of a country, but he was a sadistic one. He less ruled, more reigned over the North Blue, and in an attempt to make himself even more powerful, he ran experiments on his own children. So first was Reiju, where she still had her emotions, but otherwise she was a perfect super soldier. That not being good enough for Vinsmoke Judge, he gave even more drugs to his pregnant wife Sora to make his next batch of children, the 4 boys, an unthinking, unfeeling super soldier. Sora, of course, was against this idea, and I honestly don't even know why she was with Judge in the first place, but in retaliation of these drugs that he forced upon her to alter her children, she took some poison to try and counter out the drugs. It didn't work, unfortunately, all except for Sanji. Sanji was the only one of the 4 who was born human. The other 3 brothers were super soldiers with an exoskeleton, super strength, super speed, and no emotions. And that left Sanji to be quite the outcast in his family. He had a little bit of hope and love from his mother, who supported him in his cooking abilities and caring like a mother should. However, she passed away soon after they were born. He was a few years old. I don't know how old he was when she passed away, but that poison caused her to be deathly ill, and so eventually the illness took her, leaving Sanji utterly alone. And his backstory is really depressing, and seeing it for the first time, even thinking about it now with everything that he's gone through, it's really, really impressive to see how strong Sanji is of character and emotionally. There is a lot of depth to Sanji that I hope I can encompass in this video, but Sanji was such a failure and couldn't keep up with the rest of the activities that his brothers were training in. Judge was so embarrassed to even think of Sanji as his son that he actually staged Sanji's death, so that he could forget that Sanji ever existed, lock him away in a cell, put a helmet on him, and just forget about him. Leave him alone. Sanji was utterly tormented by this, and the only solace that he has was thinking about cooking and sailing and finding the All Blue. That's where he found the All Blue, and that's also where he found some devil fruits that he might be interested as a kid. But eventually he was able to escape this dark, dark place in his life and the abuse from his family through the help of his sister Reiju. The Germa 66, the army that they commanded, were traveling over the Red Line, as you do, into the East Blue, and after that happened, Reiju released Sanji from the bars that kept him in his cage and allowed him to escape to a nearby ship that coincidentally had some cooks on it. So a small child, 6, 8, I don't know how old he was, but he was very young. He went on the ship, worked for food, you know, learned how to cook, and tried to just survive as this small little boy rejected by his family. And to make matters worse, Vinsmoke Judge didn't even care when Sanji was running away, because the last words that Judge had said to a little Sanji was, "Do me a favor, as your father," as if that means anything. "Do me a favor and don't tell anyone that you're my son, because it's an embarrassment, it's a shame that I want to keep hidden." And so a crying, depressed little Sanji runs off and sets sail on his own with the ship that was docked on that island. It was awful, and eventually that's how he came upon Zeph, because Zeph was a pirate at the time, Redfoot Zeph, Black-Leg Sanji, Redfoot Zeph, you know who raised him. Zeph took a liking to him when Sanji exclaimed that he had the determination to find the All Blue someday, and that's why he couldn't die. So when the ship capsized through the storm and they washed up on an island, Zeph did anything that he could to keep Sanji alive. He gave him all the food and made sure that they would keep out a watch for any nearby ships. Luckily, a ship did eventually come by from Sanji calling out to them in a storm, but that didn't stop Zeph from having to sacrifice his leg to stay alive. Since he gave Sanji all of the food, Zeph didn't have anything, and unless he was gonna starve to death, which they totally should have anyway, because they were on this island for like 70 days, 90 days, some ridiculous amount of time that a tiny little child who only had like a month's worth of scarce rations definitely shouldn't have made it, but his determination, his dream definitely kept him going, along with Zeph. And so Zeph sacrificed his leg for Sanji, and that sacrifice is what kept Sanji indebted to Zeph all of these years. Eventually, they set out and they make a seafaring restaurant. Knowing now the trials of being hungry on the sea, they made a restaurant so that sailors around could always come for a bite to eat. And this is where we pick up, this is where we meet Sanji on the Baratier. He's been trained under Zeph's tutelage for cooking, fighting, his morals, everything that Sanji is, he owes to Zeph. And Sanji knows it, because when we pick up, we're done talking about his dream and backstory. Now we're going to talk about his current accomplishments. Starting in the East Blue, like I said, Sanji was introduced as a gentleman, a suave gentleman with a sharp tongue, and he was a very confident chef. And we see that he also has a lot of compassion. As Gin comes in, an enemy who couldn't pay for his food, Sanji gives it to him anyway, and through that whole interaction, it's Sanji's compassion that eventually lends Gin to take pity on him and sacrifice himself when the poison of Krieg's explosives, whatever they were, gets to him. He saves Sanji instead of killing him like Krieg asked. So it just shows that Sanji is a super caring person, as well as very strong. I mean, his feats with Pearl and then later in Arlong Park defeating a fishman underwater, that's impressive. Sanji was eventually pushed away by Zeph and the cooks with some tough love to finally force him to seek out his own dreams of finding the All Blue, something that he wasn't really willing to do on his own because he just felt like he had to stay. He felt that he owed his entire life to Zeph, and so to leave was a very difficult thing. But eventually, Luffy made a big impression on him and Zeph by being a very determined and caring and good person. And it was really cool because Luffy and Sanji even have a moment there where Sanji is risking his life to defend the Baratier, a symbol of Zeph's dream, and Luffy, seeing that sacrificial nature in Sanji, he relates it to himself and what Shanks did for him. Zeph sacrificed a foot, Shanks sacrificed his arm, and so Luffy kind of snaps Sanji out of it and says, he didn't sacrifice this for you to just die. He sacrificed this for you to live. And that really hit Sanji, and I really like that comparison between Luffy and Sanji so early on that we knew he was gonna be a great member of the crew. And so he joins the crew after the cooks of the ship try and stage a intervention of sorts of pretending that Sanji wasn't a very good cook, not good enough to be on the Baratier. Of course, that's not true. But Sanji saw it for what it was and for the support that they were trying to give him for him to follow his dreams. So he did set sail, and then he was officially part of the Straw Hats from there on. I already kind of mentioned what he did in Arlong Park, so we're gonna fast forward quite a bit here. They go through the Grand Line, they go to Drum Island, where Sanji tried to help Luffy bring Nami to Kureha, but he didn't really make it, so Luffy had to carry him and Nami up the big steep slope of the mountain that is Drum Kingdom. But we go all the way to Alabasta, which technically Little Garden. We'll talk about Little Garden because that is the first introduction of Mr. Prince. The persona that Sanji puts on and the thing that the community likes to call him whenever he's doing something slick. Because he comes across Mr. Three's secret hideout and is actually able to talk to Crocodile. To hide his identity, he introduces himself as Mr. Prince. Also a great scene where he answers the phone and says, "Welcome to the Crab Cafe," which is one of my favorite parts. It's very underrated. You don't really think about that moment too much, but it was just hilarious, that dry sarcasm and sense of humor that Sanji had that I really enjoy. He's very quick-witted and has a sharp tongue and can really give it back and forth, especially with Zoro, and we'll get to that whole relationship there. But that was the introduction of Mr. Prince, and that follows all the way into Alabasta, where he is trying to lure Crocodile and Nico Robin away from the casino so that the Straw Hats could escape and that he could go save them, because Vivi was desperately trying to find help. So Sanji stages a incident outside the casino where he beats up all the people, and he makes one of the underlings say that it was Mr. Prince, someone Crocodile would remember, which was, cool there. And then he had Chopper run as a decoy while Sanji went into the casino and saved the entire crew from these weird bananas that had alligators growing from them. It was really crazy, but we saw again how strong he was as he took all of that on, and then we see a really cool fight with him later in that arc against Mr. 2, but nothing too crazy happened with him and Mr. 2. It was more about the fact that he couldn't hit a woman. That was that first real introduction of it being like a life or death situation, but he overcame that, and Mr. 2 by that point was kind of more of a bro at that point, and they gained a lot of respect. A little bit of a bromance was formed there, so he did win, and he also helped Usopp and Chopper along the way after they had defeated Miss Merry Christmas and Mr. 4. And now moving quite along, I do want to kind of rush it a bit because there's a lot to talk about with Sanji later on with Whole Cake Island and now in Wano, so I'm just trying to speed through this. Let me know down below if I miss any big Sanji moments or some of your favorite Sanji moments in these arcs that I'm kind of flying by. But here we go into Mocktown, where this is where it's the offhanded comment that he is actually from the North Blue, which is major foreshadowing. Mr. Prince, and now he's from the North Blue. It's really piecing it together because of course we didn't know anything about the Germa 66 at that point, or Vinsmoke or anything. He was just Sanji. and that's how he should have stayed, because the Vinsmoke suck. We get some cool Sanji moments, a little bit of a Mr. Prince moment. I'm just gonna call it that each time because it's easier to really specify what I'm trying to get at is Sanji's tactical fighting. You know, he often goes off on his own and predicts what's going to happen and tries to take it into his own hands, and it's often very much needed at the time, and it's very good that he's able to figure these situations out on his own. So one such occasion was when him and Usopp went on to the Arc Maxim from Eneru, and he goes off on his own and destroys some of the gears so that the Arc Maxim was delayed taking off, and so Luffy could officially defeat Eneru and they could save Nami. So it's a really cool scene there, and we also get just a cool scene with Sanji when he is totally electrocuted by Eneru, and he's just sitting there. It's kind of hard to talk like this, but he's just sitting there like, thanks. I needed a light. And he's completely electrocuted. It's great. It's great. I love Sanji so much. Now next is Long Ring Longland, but before I talk about that exactly, I do want to mention that also in Little Garden, that was the start of Zoro and Sanji's bickering. Like Dory and Baragi, they competed over finding which was the biggest dinosaur, and just like Dory and Baragi, from then on, that argument is lasting through the years. Because now they are at each other's throats constantly, always bickering, and can never seem to get along. Of course, they really respect each other's position in the crew and trust each other to take care of the crew, but on the surface level, constantly, they are just bickering back and forth and always competing with one another. And that leads me to Long Ring Longland, where they're finally put in a position where they are forced to work together, and working together was actually in their best interest. So it's a really cool moment there, and was actually highlighted in the We Are One special movies that we got recently leading up for like the episode 1000, and that whole thing, it was emphasized there that that was one moment that they really were on the same level and they got together, and when they work together, their strength is hard to compete with, so they win their competition there, and you know, they don't make up in any way, like they definitely continue bickering after that. But it was good to see that they are capable of working together. Now on to Water 7, nothing too big happens. He is the one with Chopper to come across Robin when she was first running away, and they kind of have that interaction there. And then he fights Pasta Boy on the train, rearranges his facial structure, fights with knives, that was one thing. A big thing with Sanji is, of course, not fighting with his hands, because his hands are very precious to him because he's a cook, and he needs his hands, and so he doesn't fight with what's basically cooking utensils, but he was fighting against pasta, so he made an exception, and being a cook and being such a talented chef, he was definitely no joke with those knives, so he took out that random guy on the sea train. But then we go into Ennie's lobby, where he has his hunter moment. Super cool there again. So many really awesome moments with Sanji. Like the rest of the Straw Hats, Sanji got his big power up by creating friction so much that it turns into fire on his leg, and he calls it Diable Jamba because all of his named attacks are in French. He's very French aesthetic, French cuisine, if you will. Very suave ladies man, you know. So Diable Jamba is his power-up, and he uses it pretty well. It's a really cool ability, and similar to Zoro and Ashura, I'm hoping that there's early forms of armament hockey here if we want to look back at it, because even as a chef, setting your leg on fire is probably painful. So maybe there was some early forms of armament hockey there to make him bear with that. And then also we get, after his fight, we get another Mr. Prince moment where he goes off on his own and actually shuts the doors of the Gates of Justice, the Gates of Justice, the Gates of No Return, whatever they were called, where Robin was being taken to. He beats up the guards who are stationed there and he closes them so that Robin was trapped there and they had a chance to get to her before she was taken. It really delayed all the Marines there. So again, Mr. Prince really comes in handy when he goes off on his own. On Thriller Bark, Sanji gets a big fight against Absalom, an invisible fruit user who Sanji was very jealous of to begin with, but it's a cool fight there where he rescues Nami from marrying the creep, and he just has a really noble moment there with Nami. And then later on in the arc, we get the nothing happened moment with Zoro, But Sanji was right there beside him during that whole exchange. In fact, Sanji stepped in front of him when Zoro was first offering his own head to protect Luffy. Sanji steps in and says, "You know what, you guys go on without me. This is the end of my journey. Kuma, you don't know who I am, but Blackleg Sanji is gonna make a big wave in the world if you don't take me out now, so you better take my head, leave these guys alone." Unfortunately, you know, with him being so beat up and everything, Zoro takes him by surprise and knocks him out so that Sanji didn't have to sacrifice himself, which again highlights their relationship of really truly caring for each other and the crew. Between the two of them, the monster trio especially, they know that their responsibility first and foremost is protecting the crew, and they trust each other deeply. They know that each of them would go through hell to protect the crew. So it was really nice that Sanji was part of that, and although he got knocked out by Zoro, and Zoro took the shine there of the moment with nothing happened, Sanji was also the one who found him and brought him back. So he witnessed everything, and he was also the one who told the random pirates from Lola's crew not to tell Luffy, because Zoro's sacrifice wasn't to get a pat on the back, it was just something he needed to do. Don't make a big deal out of it, just keep it to yourselves. So it was a really, really nice moment there between the two of them, and especially seeing their dedication towards Luffy and the crew. After Thriller Bark, we get to the Flying Fish Riders arc, which is not something I would mention in any other character probably, except for Sanji, because that's where we meet Duval. Nothing really significant happens there. They get an ally out of Duval after Sanji kicks and rearranges his face, but it is hilarious that Sanji's bounty poster was the only one hand-drawn, and poorly hand-drawn at that, because he was the one out of all the crew who was most excited to get the bounty poster, because he was dreaming about all the ladies across the land falling in love with him through his bounty poster. That didn't quite happen. So it was funny that he had the awful, awful drawing as his bounty poster after Eni's lobby, and then to find someone who is actually his bounty poster. So he and Duval have that connection, if you could call it that. In the end, Duval becomes an ally, and then they go on to Sabaody. The disaster on Sabaody strikes, and Sanji, like the rest of the crew, were just focused on surviving and protecting the rest of his crew members, and he gets really devastated when his crewmates are just sent away right in front of him. He goes into a rage, very similar to Luffy and the other Straw Hats, where his friends are being sent away and he can't do anything to stop it. That really, really hits him. It seems like Sanji is the most vocal about it, at least, that he can't do anything to stop what was happening, aside from Luffy. He seems to be the most torn up about it. But then we hit the time skip, where Sanji is sent to Kamabaka Kingdom to study under and fight under Ivankov and the 99 Newkama Kempo fighters in order to find the 99 healing magic attack cuisine, whatever you want to call it. It was special recipes that Ivankov, after seeing that Sanji wanted to train, and they didn't really get along too well, but that was also because Sanji was not too happy about being sent to that island. He was first introduced to the island with a bunch of women on it. An island full of women. That couldn't be anything. Meanwhile, Luffy. But Sanji, it turns out that they are not what he thought they were, and instead he has to fight for his life, and it soon turned into his hell memories of running and running and running. But he gains a few new abilities through that, and he also learns the 99 recipes from the 99 cooks there. I think we've really only seen those special recipes used like once in Punk Hazard. I really want to see more about what those recipes were, because that was the whole point of Sanji training, is to get those recipes. He, of course, got a bunch of new abilities and really improved his fighting style and durability and everything, but the whole reason was that he was getting a bunch of recipes. And we don't really talk about that. I feel like we need to talk about that more. Maybe at the end of Wano, the big banquet after Wano, maybe we'll get to see one of the attack cuisine recipes. That would be cool. But that's the time skip. So Sanji trains for 2 years on Kamabaka Kingdom and goes through hell. And now, after the time skip, we go to Fishman Island. On Sabaody, Sanji was not too impressive because he had the whole ladies thing. I get it, someone like Sanji trapped away for 2 whole years. it would probably take its toll on it, and the whole Sabaody gag was funny, but the fact that it lasted into Fishman Island was, I think, what took it too far. But hey, it introduced the plot of blood transfusions being a political issue for fishmen versus humans, so that was good, I guess. We got something out of it. Throughout that arc, he's already showcasing some super cool new abilities. Grill shot against the Kraken, that was impressive and really cool. He also has Hell Memories, just focusing all of his hatred and terrible time on Kamabaka Kingdom, as well as my favorite, he can now skywalk, which is super cool ability, and it makes a lot of sense for him considering how strong his legs are, right kitten? But I'm obligated to say at least one good thing about Sanji very early post-time skip, and that is his interaction with Jinbei and Nami. When Jinbei confesses to having a big part in Arlong being free, and therefore pretty much ruining Nami's life, Sanji is very protective of her, and he takes it very seriously and demands that Jinbei apologize to her, and whatever method that he takes going down this road is going to determine whether or not Sanji ever forgives him. Fortunately, he does, and Nami also shows compassion and says that she doesn't hold Jinbei accountable for Arlong's actions, and Sanji is able to let go. But it just shows that, like, especially because it was Nami, I'm sure, Sanji was the one who knew about what Nami went through, unlike a lot of the other crew. Only Usopp was the only one who really knows what happened to Nami. So Sanji was a really good figurehead there to stand up for Nami and speak for her, even though she didn't need it and she chose the forgiving route instead. But the end of the arc showcases all of the Straw Hat's new abilities, and Sanji's big fight is with Jinbei, which is nice, poetic there, and they take on Warasume. Huge dude. But that's a really cool fight there too. But we move on to then Punk Hazard. To make up for all the suffering that Sanji had to go through, we get a very happy moment from Sanji where he's able to be in Nami's body. That sounds bad. He was able to live. He was switched with Nami. Their souls switched bodies. And he went a little crazy there. And he also didn't want to be switched back, of course. So there were some funny moments with him there, especially with one of my favorite scenes is when he's in Nami's body with Usopp, Brook, and Zoro, and he slips in some snow, and Zoro, without thinking it's Nami, goes and catches him, and they're just kind of like staying there like, oh wait, it's just you. And Brook says, how romantic. It's such a funny moment, but Sanji eventually does switch back, but he's the main person leading on the whole side plot with Kinemon while everything else is going on. He finds Kinemon's head, carries it around, and eventually helps reattach it, and then that's where they get the whole plot for Wano. Although he's kind of put off by Kinemon's attitude, he does show a decent amount of kindness, beating him up a bit too in retaliation. But he does help Kinemon get his son back. Momo, not actually his son, but plot. He helps Kinemon there. And then also, we have a little Mr. Prince moment there. It's more of a just Sanji ladies man moment there, where Tashigi is being assaulted with the rest of her crew from Vergo. Vergo is a very strong opponent, and Sanji, hearing her tears from far away, shows up and saves all of them because Vergo was just gonna wipe them all out for knowing his true identity. So Sanji goes up against him, and although Vergo is very strong, Sanji is able to hold him off long enough until the whole thing with the poison gas is coming in and Vergo goes off and finds Law instead. But that was a pretty intense, quick confrontation for Sanji there, and it even breaks his shin bone. Ouch. And then at the end of the arc, we see that he uses one of his special recipes for giving everyone stamina back and healing after the fight and everything. So that was cool. Again, wish we would see more though. But after that, we now go to Dressrosa, where unfortunately he leaves pretty early in the arc, but not before he has another awesome confrontation with Doflamingo himself, putting himself in front of him to protect the crew. Unfortunately, Doflamingo pretty much overwhelms him, which is fair. Doflamingo overwhelmed Luffy and Law with Treble, but we trouble. And then he was sent away to get the rest of the Straw Hats away from Doflamingo. But of course, I am going to mention his whole interaction with Violet. His compassion and his kindness towards her, even though she was kind of an enemy, kind of not, he was able to make her switch sides. Of course, she was secretly always on their side, but she was triple agenting, trying to lure him in for the Don Quixote pirates until she realized that he was actually a really good person and gave her a glimmer of hope to save her country. So then she actually does help him, and they get along really well. He unfortunately has to leave her to go save the crew from Doflamingo, and informing Law of the whole setup at the moment. So he was able to do that, get really good intelligence from Violet, but they have a really cute moment there, him and Viola. A lot of people ship it. I ship it. I ship everything though, so it's okay. But it was really nice to see how Sanji's kindness kind of pushed back their hardened front too, just like Gin, Viola. It's clear that he truly does care about people, so whenever we get that highlighted, it's always good to see for Sanji. But that's the end of the Dressrosa segment, because then, like I said, he has to set sail with the Twirly Brow pirates, and they go off to Zoe early because of Doflamingo. They also come across Big Mom, and they fight against the Queen Mama Shanta, and that eventually leads to him being found by Beiji. Beiji, working for Big Mom at the time, gets him alone and gives him the proper invitation to his own wedding. I remember that was a huge revelation at the time, that he was sentenced to marry one of Big Mom's children, and that's where we learned that his full name is Vinsmoke Sanji, a name that strikes fear into him at just the mention of it, the fact that someone else knows about it and that he's being wanted for it. This was slightly foreshadowed, no one could have guessed what it was for, but his bounty poster at that time did say only alive, so this was the reason, it was because of the Vinsmokes. But at that time, in Zoe, in front of Nami, Brook, and Chopper, he does leave the crew, and he goes off to Whole Cake Island to try and protect the Straw Hats from becoming one of Big Mom's subordinates, because if he was part of the crew, that's what would have happened. So he had to go and figure out everything that was going on with his family, and Big Mom, and everything, and he had the intention of coming back. Little did we all know that Whole Cake Island was definitely more than he could handle on his own. And so once Luffy found out what was happening, Luffy immediately went after him with the Sanji retrieval team. And this is where Sanji's past is revealed. The whole past with Judge, his abusive brothers, Reiju, everything. Sanji being deemed a failure by everyone in the kingdom, and now they're only claiming that he's part of the family so that he could be used to gain political power with Big Mom, to marry one of her children and become an ally. Facing his family again after so long, I'll admit it was satisfying to see how strong he was in comparison with his natural worked for strength, because he fucked up Yanji, and even going against Judge, he was not immediately taken down. He was only caught off guard because of Judge's underhanded tactics. So it was clear that he was already impressive with his own strength, and even though they all deemed him a failure, it was clear, and this whole arc was centered around the idea that Sanji was actually the only successful sibling because of Sora's sacrifice. And looking at it that way really hits hard, because Sanji just could never live with the fact that he was ever compared to his brothers. And add Big Mom on top of that, one of the Yonko, he was utterly alone and helpless. His only solace was in Pudding, the girl that he was going to marry, and the sweetest little thing at first. Turns out she was also there only to manipulate and use him for her own gain and make sure that she looks good with Big Mom, and they were all secretly planning to kill him and his family all along. So he is very distraught in everything that's happening right now, and then he comes across Luffy. We're gonna get a big Luffy and Usopp moment here where Sanji fights Luffy, because Luffy is coming back and he's there to save Sanji, not knowing why he left the crew and wanting to make sure that he's okay, but Sanji only saw this as Luffy going against something that he couldn't. The whole crew wasn't even there. Sanji felt totally helpless in these situations. His only solution was to marry Pudding, and this was before he found out that the Big Mom pirates were actually planning to assassinate all of them. So his only solution there was to sacrifice himself so that the Straw Hats could be free and not be under Big Mom's control. And so with all of these emotions and turmoil within him, he takes it out on Luffy. He had to make sure that the Vinsmokes did not think that he had any ties remaining to the Straw Hats, so he put on quite a show, It also, you know, managed to get some anger out, I'm sure, but he was also just frustrated with himself and frustrated with Luffy that Luffy wouldn't just leave, because he did not see an outcome that the Straw Hats would get out unscathed. So in order to protect his crew, he sacrificed his entire life, marrying himself off to Big Mom's daughter and living alongside the Vinsmokes even, all to save Luffy. And you know, it just, with Big Mom again, it's hard to compete with a Yonko. And so he fights Luffy, and it's a very, very emotional scene as they're going back and forth, and Luffy just refuses to fight him. As Luffy often does, he sees the true feelings within Sanji, and seeing that this is all an act, and Luffy is really just confused. He just doesn't understand why people won't learn that he's there to help, and anything that Luffy can do, once he sets his mind on it, he can do. There was just so many emotions and thoughts running through Sanji's head during this fight, and he does not hold back because of it. His hands were on the line because they had handcuffs that if he left the island they would explode, because Judge knew how important they were to him. His benefactor Zeph was even threatened, which that was a big red flag for Sanji, making him do pretty much nothing in retaliation. And now Luffy and his crew, his family, his real family, is now also on the line, coming into Big Mom's territory and getting hurt. And he even pleaded with Big Mom, like, if I do this, will you leave them alone? And she says, yeah, sure. It's Big Mom. She's manipulative and she's gonna take what she wants whenever she wants. But Sanji feels that the only way to get out of the situation is to cooperate and play his part. So he forcefully gets rid of Luffy, and that leads to a very, very heartbreaking scene where they're both crying, and Luffy even says that he refuses to leave. He knows that Sanji is going through so much right now, and he states the fact that he can't become Pirate King without Sanji. And Sanji is just crying as all the Vinsmokes are laughing around him, and you just really, really feel the heartbreak that Sanji feels. And Luffy even says something similar to Corzon, which is always reminds me of it, is, you know, similar to when Law stabs Corzon and Corzon says, you were the one who stabbed me, but I knew you were the one who truly in pain. That's what Luffy tells Sanji, like, every time you kick me, I know you're the one hurting. And so it's so sad that Luffy took all of that, knowing that Sanji just needed to let out his sadness and desperation, and unfortunately it was taken out on Luffy, and he does not go easy on Luffy in any capacity. Even knocks out Luffy cold. Granted, Luffy wasn't using haki or anything, so as he's leaving with the rest of the Vinsmokes who are just laughing at the display, he is there broken. He is totally broken. Even Nami slaps him for what he just did, which is totally fair, because he totally seemingly betrayed Luffy there, and Nami was just as confused as to why Sanji could do that and look down upon them after everything they've been through. And you could tell that that slap hurt him really bad. Really bad. This whole fight and interaction really highlighted just what was really important to Sanji this whole time. He could never identify with his family, and when push come to shove, he wasn't able to fully protect the crew. He did whatever he could, but he still had to hurt his own captain and push him away forcefully to get what he needed to be done. And to him, that's just a failure again. Again and again and again, Sanji is faced with failing. And it takes the entire arc for Sanji to realize, with the help of Reiju again, Reiju's really the MVP here, because she released Sanji from his physical entrapment, and then even then when he was forced to be all alone and was faced with Big Mom's betrayal against the Vinsmokes, Reiju was there again to point out what I had mentioned earlier, that in Sora's eyes, in their mother's eyes, Sanji was the one that she saved. He was the one success who turned out how she wished that all her children could have turned out to be. And it's really, really sad there, because Sanji just never saw it that way. But once that perspective was given to him, he was able to think a little bit more clearly. Luckily, this all has a happy ending as Reiju points out this better perspective for him, and he goes out and seeks out Luffy, who is waiting for him by King Bomb. There was a lot of stuff that happened in between, but eventually Sanji does reunite with Luffy, and unlike Usopp, Sanji immediately knows everything that he did wrong. You know, Usopp does know he was just putting on a facade to pretend that everything was okay. Sanji does none of that. Sanji is filled with self-hatred at turning on his captain, hurting them, betraying them, and being stuck in this position that he was just giving Luffy food so that he wouldn't die. I mean, he saw the whole thing with Robin and how Robin tried to do everything she could to distance herself from the Straw Hats in fear of them being hurt on her behalf. He knew what happened there. He knew that that wasn't gonna fly, so I don't know why he tried it himself, but that's just Sanji's nature, is to put everyone before himself and make sure that he does whatever he can to help them. Faced with Luffy though, of course Luffy again sees through all of Sanji's facades of trying to sacrifice himself for the crew, and Luffy's not gonna have any of that, like I mentioned with Robin, and Luffy punches him in the face and says, "I don't want to hear any more of your lies. Tell me what you truly want. Tell me you want to live. Tell me what you truly want." And Sanji just breaks down, all of these emotions crushing down on him, and he says that he wants to go back to the Sunny. He wants to be back with Luffy, and he wants to save his family, who he has no emotional ties to, but he still is just the person that he is, that he can't let them die. And Luffy accepts that no problem. He knows who Sanji is. He knows Sanji is a kind, compassionate person, unlike the rest of his family, and even though they were awful to him, they're still his biological family, and he would not stand by and let them all be assassinated. So with the help of Luffy, and then Beiji, and Gangster Gastino, all of them come together in Jinbei and crash his wedding. And some really cool moments from him with observation haki, being able to dodge bullets, and he stands up to his family, saving all of them against Sparrow's candy when they were all gonna die, and he's standing on the table looking down on them, as he properly should, and all of them are just kind of shocked to see that he would risk so much to save them. Most of them don't have emotions though. Judge is just a wreck. He doesn't understand anything. Judge is just a man-child, and I don't like him. They crash the wedding and save the Vinsmokes, and even again a show of compassion. Compassion's my favorite word when it comes to Sanji, because that's just what he is. It's the best word to describe him. His compassion towards Pudding, even though he knew that she was going to try and kill him and shock him with her third eye, he saw it and he genuinely adored it. He saw her eye and just was speechless about how beautiful it was, and that's just who Sanji is. And so she started crying. She couldn't go through with the assassination, and that's kind of what let everything go from there. And they do get away, and relatively scot-free. Sorry, Pedro. They get away from Whole Cake Island, and they do bring Sanji back, and Sanji really has the realization that his whole life he's been deemed a failure, when in reality he was the only non-failure. I wish there was a more clever way to say that. He also has the whole thing with Pudding, and to really emphasize the fact that strength and power aren't what makes Sanji Sanji, his big role in Whole Cake Island was to bake the cake to save the island. He didn't have to save the Big Mom pirates from Big Mom herself by baking the cake. She didn't have to help Pudding and Chiffon. He didn't have to do any of that. But it's Sanji, so he puts everything he's got into a delicious, delicious cake that, you know, even shocks Big Mom. And it's shown once again that Sanji isn't meant to be the most powerful person in the world. He isn't meant to be just an uncaring soldier. He's Sanji. He's the cook of the ship. He is compassionate and a very, very deeply written character for all of these things going on for him. Whole Cake Island, and now moving on to Wano. The inner monologues of Sanji are just fantastic. So they leave Whole Cake Island after the whole interaction with Judge at the very end, where Judge just can't seem to comprehend what a good person is. And so he asks Luffy why he even bothers with Sanji, but of course we all know the answer to that. So now we go into Wano, and along the way he gets his new bounty poster, which he's very happy that he has a bigger bounty than Zoro, but he's not so happy about the Vinsmoke name now plastered next to his face. So the whole world now knows that he is Vinsmoke Sanji. And so that name follows him definitely into Wano. But first we get the raid suit. The The raid suit is a enhanced bodysuit that gives Sanji all the abilities of the Germa. We see him use it for the first time against Page 1 in order to cover his identity, and then also to see women in the bathhouse. It's co-ed anyway, why did he have to? I don't understand. But it's very important to mention and to clarify that Sanji has never used the raid suit to become stronger. He's only used it in tactical situations to gain an advantage. So again, with disguising himself, women's baths doesn't count. And even in this most recent episode, we see that he used the raid suit again to go invisible to save Momo. Every time he uses it, it's definitely not to get stronger, because he does not want to rely on Vinsmoke technology to be stronger or to be anything. He doesn't want anything to do with them. And that's where Soba Mask is born, against Page 1. So that's that. Some really cool moments where Law fangirls over Stealth Black, his form of the Germa 66 soldier, so that was cool, and gotta point that out. But now we're gonna go into the raid, where last episode we did see that Sanji used the raid suit to save Momo, which was a big Mr. Prince moment. Again, Mr. Prince, great. But from here on out, there will be manga spoilers, so if you're not caught up to the current chapters, especially the most recent chapter, 1031, and I am glad that I didn't do my Sanji video prior to pretty much last minute, because each chapter is just giving more Sanji development as we go, which I couldn't be happier for. But yes, now we're gonna go into manga spoiler territory. Last warning, here we go. Let's talk about current events in the manga. And so, starting with the raid, after where the anime is covered, the big thing that Sanji is involved in, there's a lot. The first, we'll start with Black Maria. He was captured by Black Maria, and he was asked to get Nico Robin there as a trap. But it was a really cool moment with the relationship between Robin and Sanji, and just kind of showcasing Robin's development with the crew and within herself. Sanji, without hesitation, does cry out to her and asks for her help. Even knowing it was a trap, he relied on her, and she was nothing but happy for that. So it was really cool to see that Sanji, although he can't hit a woman, he definitely has the means to rely on his female crewmates to pick up the slack that he can't. And that was a big thing with Enies Lobby, which I don't think I mentioned with Sanji in Enies Lobby, is that the whole thing with Nami and Khalifa. He came across Khalifa first, and she totally clapped him because he couldn't fight back, and that's where Nami had to step up. So a very similar situation here with Robin, where he cried out to Robin to save him, and it seemed very pathetic to Black Maria, but to Robin, it meant the world to her. So it was really cute to see that development there, that he definitely relies on his other crewmates to get him out of situations, which of course he does. They all rely on each other. But after that whole encounter, we go to the current events of the manga. And like I mentioned, I'm glad that I recorded this video a little bit late so that I could talk about the recent chapter, chapter 1031. And even before that, we see that Sanji has gained an exoskeleton and has transformed into something of a Germa soldier. Something in the raid suit activated some dormant genes within him that, while at first didn't come to the surface and he was just a normal human, he is now experiencing this transformation. And this last chapter, the transformation is complete, and he is officially a Germa soldier, at least the first stage of it. Because as soon as he figures out that that raid suit is affecting his emotions and his physical capabilities, again, he wants nothing to do with the Vinsmokes, even if it means throwing away the raid suit. And he does. He destroys it, and it explodes, which, you know, the way One Piece is going, I'm sure the raid suit is fine. We'll see the raid suit in a few chapters. Pelled until proven. Joy Girl's got it right. But he discards the raid suit and really is just having a panic attack as his emotions are seemingly not under his control anymore, and he thinks back to the Vinsmokes, and he's desperate to just not turn out like them. And it's a very ambiguous scene in the last chapter where he comes across a woman, blacks out, and then she's on the floor bleeding, and she's seemingly terrified of her, and everyone else assumes that he hit her, which is something that he would never do. He stood up to his brothers when they were attacking that Colette girl in the mansion. Everything that the Vinsmokes stand for is against Sanji. in his morals and his upbringing, everything that Zeph gave to him and raised him and loved him, everything he is, he owes to Zeph and the way that Zeph raised him. So to have the possibility presented to him that he could lose all of that, it's tearing him apart and he doesn't know what to do with himself. And he's fighting Queen while this is happening. His inner monologue is just like I had mentioned before. It's something that you just can't compare to anything else. You know, I've seen people say that Sanji is the best written Straw Hat. Aside from Luffy, I'd agree. Maybe even on par with Luffy. Yeah, that behind the scenes development of his emotional state and his values, he's definitely one of the ones who has the strictest values and holds them to be very dear to himself. The whole not hitting women thing and being a cook, it's everything for him. And to lose that is just unbearable for him. So he is really struggling with what is going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen, but actually 1032 is out by now, so does anything significant happen with Sanji in this chapter? There was a break. There was no chapter. We still don't know. Really? Yep.
We were on a break!
Coffee house?
You bet.
Okay, well, but Sanji losing his emotions and his compassion, there's the word again, really just rips apart his character. So I'm going to assume that his emotions aren't actually being taken apart, and we'll mark this as the end of his current accomplishment segment, and we're gonna move on to his future. What his dream is gonna look like, and most importantly what we're talking about right now is what the end of Wano is gonna look like for him, because with this whole development of him possibly losing his emotions, I think that's something that he definitely needs to deal with, and would be really fascinating if he did have to overcome that somehow. Because if the transformation is complete, unless it fades, which, you know, you'd then have to wonder if the exoskeleton and the power-ups would fade as well, how would he overcome this? Is this going to be like a recurring thing that Sanji has anger issues now? I don't know if I would be enjoying that too much, maybe for a short period of time until he overcomes them, but his full Germa transformation is complete, and as a lot of people noticed, his eyebrows are different. But his eyebrows being backwards was actually a plot point because he was different than the rest of his family. Because the rest of his family have, which is blew my mind when I realized this, the sixes of the Germa double six. It's all over their clothes, it's also their eyebrows. So Sanji had reverse eyebrows going in the opposite direction to signify that he wasn't part of them. But now that he has that first stage of development for the Germa technology awakened by the raid suit, his eyebrows changed. That is pretty crazy that his eyebrows are changed, and that kind of lends itself to being a more permanent thing. So I hope he gets to deal with whatever emotional issues that come with that. Best case, he keeps his emotion and he keeps the power up. That's the best case scenario. I mean, at the end of the day, depending on how you read 1031, it could be that he doesn't even have anger issues, because everything could have been skewed for us to perceive that way, because he didn't hit the woman. I don't think he hit the woman, let's just say that out loud now. And then with the whole thing of him getting really angry earlier, he could have just been angry because he's going through a lot. He's just kind of having a panic attack right now. He's not thinking clearly, and he's maybe misinterpreting that for unstable emotions or losing his emotions. Because then his inner monologue about immediately going to what Luffy needs for his crew to be the Pirate King, what would be the best choice? Should he be this unstoppable machine who could take out Queen easily? Or should he be himself? And with the whole struggle of identity that was very prominent in Whole Cake Island, struggling with being comfortable with who he is and not what he was supposed to be born into, it's clear what Sanji's decision is, and that's why he destroys the raid suit. So at the end of Wano, I see that Sanji is definitely going to overcome what is happening, if there's anything to overcome, but I do hope that he keeps the exoskeleton, because that was a pretty cool power-up, and I think it was something that he really needed, so that would be cool. And then, of course, as for the Queen fight, he is going to defeat Queen easily, because Queen embodies everything evil with science and technology, just like his father, Judge. So it's definitely fitting that Queen is going to be completely destroyed by Sanji, with or without the enhancements by the Vinsmokes. But moving on after that into the grand scheme of things, of course there's going to be big Sanji moments dotted throughout, but I'm just going to go and end the video out with talking about his dream, which is actually pretty simple. If the prediction of how it's going to go is actually how it's going to go. If it's actually a location that they're just going to come across, maybe on Laugh Tale, that's something. Still a simple solution though. No offense, Sanji. I mean, Sanji's development up to this point is nothing but simple, so it's fair to finally have something easy to talk about, and that's his dream. But the big consensus, myself included, is that Sanji will find the All Blue when it's created. And it will be created when the red line on top of Fishman Island and also at Reverse Mountain is destroyed. Possibly the entire red line will be destroyed so that all of One Piece could be in one piece. But the destruction of the red line in at least those two places on the Grand Line would allow all four seas and the Grand Line to pour and mix in with each other. All of the different fish and wildlife that comes with the different territories, they would all be mixed together. That would also allow, Brook with Laboon, everything with the ancient weapons. For Sanji, that moment where the rock tumbles down and there's probably a huge whirlpool happening at first, but when it all settles and it's this just big open ocean and they start to see fish from the north and fish from the west, and Sanji just says, he's like, we did it. We created the All Blue. Maybe it wasn't real. I mean, that would lend itself to the All Blue never existing in the first place. But I think it would be really neat that Luffy's journey creates the All Blue along the way. And by finding the All Blue end game, end of series, I could definitely see Sanji creating a sort of Baratier 2.0 to carry on Zeph's dream of creating a seafaring restaurant, as well as finding the All Blue. Maybe they move the Baratier to the All Blue, and then they get kind of like other franchises across the different blues as well. Or they just create a brand new giant restaurant in the All Blue and just a bunch of people all flock there to see what kind of cuisine can be made with all of the resources of all four seas. I think it would just be really, really sweet to see him and Zeph living out their dream on the Baratier 2.0 or the Baratier, and just relaxing and taking care of the New Age pirates who come by starving, and they're able to make a big name for themselves by cooking all of the fish in the entire world, all in one place, one piece, and that's the All Blue. So that is Sanji's endgame in my eyes. I want to know what your endgame Sanji looks like, and if you had any differences in how you think the end of Wano is gonna go, or anything about his future, if he's gonna have any big moments with the Vinsmokes, because I'm not sure if the Vinsmokes are going to be recurring later on, because there's a lot that we have to cover for the end of series, and I don't know if the Vinsmokes really have a place in it. I think they're done. I'm okay if they're done, because Sanji dealt with them and now he's dealing with Queen, which is also linked to the Vinsmokes and the Germa 66 because they used to work together. I think Vegapunk would actually be a really interesting interaction, not only for Chopper and Frankie, but also for Sanji, because Vegapunk actually worked with his father, so if Vegapunk is actually a good guy, it would be interesting to see someone related to his father and dealt with the same things that his father did without being completely evil like his father. So I think there could be some really promising interactions when Vegapunk is finally introduced, whether that be at the end of Wano or on Elbaf, or when they finally go up against the world government and go to Marijois, which I assume they're gonna do, all this crazy stuff. But that wraps up my Sanji appreciation video. I sure do talk a lot, and this is probably gonna be a really long video again. But if you are here till the end, make sure you comment below all of your thoughts and your opinions about this video, and leave a like and subscribe, because all of that helps out a lot and it shows how many people are really appreciating the appreciation series. But I had a lot of fun making this video and all these videos, and stay tuned for next week. We finally get to Nami. I know Nami is like technically number 3, but I was just doing, in my eyes, she doesn't really join the crew until Arlong Park, so that's why she's so far here. But we get to talk about Nami next week, so I'm super excited about that, and make sure you subscribe so you're notified about that video next week as we go through all the Straw Hats. Make sure you watched any of the previous ones, all leading up to the end of the year, all 10 Straw Hats. Also, feel free to check me out on Twitch and Twitter for more gaming, One Piece, and anime content. But until the next video, I hope you all have a great day, follow your dreams, and check me next time. Bye!